So user experience. What is user experience? Just wanted to kind of go over that really quickly and clarify for folks what we're really talking about here. Up to this point, a lot of the classes you've taken may have been more focused on specific nuts and bolts of web design. We're kind of rolling in the user experience, the UX of things now, which is a little bit higher order thinking. This chart, I feel like, is really useful. It's on usability.gov, the what and why of user experience. It's a useful chart for describing, or at least showing, what a user experience designer really does. And at the core of that, if you look at this chart, you can kind of see it makes it obvious. Whether we're talking about a product, or we're talking about a website or an app build, or really anything that you produce as a design person that a user or a client or a client's client can interact with, the user experience designer tries to make that interaction, the experience with whatever you've produced as a product, whatever your team is producing as a product, and that client, the most valuable, useful, least painful interaction possible. And you can see, like, all of these things, the traits here, make the experience valuable, make the product usable, make it useful, make it desirable, make it accessible, which we'll talk about later a little more. Credible, is the product or the brand or whatever we're creating credible? Is it findable out in the world? All of these things. So as you can see, it's not so much concerned with the nuts and bolts like we have been in the past, coding and graphics creation. Yes, it is all of those things, but it's a lot of it is more these intangibles, these things that you have to really think about before you really even set pen to paper. A lot of times, metaphorically or physically, these things need to be considered before you design your product. So if we scroll down a little bit here, again, these kinds of things like, is your content, again, this can be anything. Remember, when we say content, this could be just a simple, you can apply the rules of user experience to anything, to designing a chair, to designing a business card, a brochure, a website. It doesn't matter how complicated or how simple it is. These rules still apply. So whatever you design should be useful. It should be original. Now, original is debatable, whether it needs to be original, but it would be nice. Does it fulfill a need? That's the most useful thing. Does it fulfill your client's needs? Is it usable? Right, so whatever you've produced, is it easy to use? Is it overly complex? Then that's a bad thing. We can boil things down with UX to most usable states. Desirable, right? So basic things, again, aesthetics, things of that nature that as a regular visual designer we're concerned with. Of course, the user experience is influenced by the image of the whatever we're producing. So a UX designer kind of governs that as well. Is it findable, right? So this is a new facet kind of with social media. I mean, this has always been a problem in the field. How do you find a brand? But these days, there's a lot of tools that we can use and access as a user experience designer that are out there that make this a little bit more important than it used to be, or at least easier to access for us. So it makes it part of our job. That's a huge deal, is making the content findable somewhere. Usually that means online these days. Accessible. So this is a big deal. A lot of people haven't thought about this, and we'll get into accessibility later. Your content, whatever it is, again, and we'll watch a little video about this later. There's a little video that we'll watch from a object design video called Objectified that talks about a vegetable peeler and talking about people with disabilities and holding vegetable peelers and thinking about people with physical disabilities or what have you, that how do we tailor our content so that everyone can access it? We don't want to have just things that people can read. Again, if people have visual impairments, then that doesn't work. So accessibility has become something very important to think about. Credibility, again, trusting the brand or trusting the product in some way, shape, or form. Again, the user experience designer has to think about that. So all of those things, again, a little bit more of a breakdown there. It's a wide-ranging field. Now, that's highlighted by, down here is a list of kind of sub-disciplines and things that a user experience designer has to do. So as a UX designer, project management is a large part of this. Trying to figure out when things have to be created, when things have to be implemented, all of that management, UX designer can handle that. User research, this is huge. We're going to get into user research this semester quite a bit. This is, again, more and more falling on the back of the user experience designers to do research on your target market. It makes sense. The more you find out about your target market, the more custom you can make your content. Usability evaluations, man, these are huge. We're going to do some of this stuff. Checking your content, not just checking your content with experts, but checking your content with the people that are actually going to use it. That's crazy important, is figuring out, do your users even like the way you're doing things? Again, we'll get into this later, but that's a huge part of it. Usability. Okay. Information architecture, again, content structure, information design. That's used to be a whole different discipline in and of itself, has been rolled into UX. How do we structure the information so it's even findable if there's a lot of it? Big deal. UI design, again, was kind of the realm of the designer or the programmer. A lot of times has become part of the UX design. We're going to do some interface design in this class and talk about things related to that, UX patterns, things of that nature. So interface design is a big part. Interaction design, not only, again, we're not talking about just digital products and pointing and clicking here. How do people really interact with your product or your service? What does the customer do when they first approach it? Whether it's a physical building or whether it's a website, all of that has to be considered. Visual design, good old school graphic design style stuff, that's part of the UX domain. Content strategy, doing social media setups, how to roll out content, what kind of content to deliver, video, otherwise, what's most effective. UX designer. Again, this accessibility stuff and the analytics. Huge part of what I do these days is analytics, delivering analytics to my clients, and I'll show you a lot of that stuff as we go. So there's a good overview. Again, there's a lot of hats. A UX designer does a lot of things, but at its core is trying to make whatever experience that you are delivering to your client or your customer, for both essentially, the most valuable and useful and findable, accessible, etc. possible. So there's a good overview. If you have any questions about that, feel free to email me. I can always make more videos. But that's just kind of UX in a nutshell.